Hola, boa tarde, everybody. I am just getting my desktop set up here so that I can begin to present. I'm going to turn the Johann Sebastian Bach off. Unfortunately, I do so love to listen to classical music. That is actually just FYI, that's my work music all day long. For me, I have to listen to the music that my that my father used to make me listen to when I sat in the back of the Cadillac, and I knew I had done something wrong because he won't talk to me. He just turned up the music. Okay, so let's get my co-pilot here, Ryan, into the room. If anybody in the room now could just raise your hand. I just want to make sure that you can indeed hear me. And there we go. Thank you, Baruz. You are number one on the board. Sharon as well. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. All right, we got lots of hands. So we don't need any more hands. All right, guys. Welcome. I am so happy to be joined by lots of people today. Apparently, you were as excited about this bill as I am. Um, there's a lot to talk about here. Hey Ryan, how's it going?
Hey John, hi everybody. Super
Hello.
excited to jump into this today.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me. I don't want you to take it personally. I'm going to mute you just for a minute, okay? And then join me as we get kicked off here. Anyways, I am not screen sharing. That is good because I just wanted to say hello to all of you here in Portugal or perhaps in the United States, like Ryan here. Whether it is early in the morning or it is in the afternoon here, welcome. I am John McNertney at Green Ocean Global Advisors, and we are going to be talking about the One Big Beautiful Bill today and what it means for us as expats. We'll also be talking about what it means just in general, in case you have not done the required reading around this one. So let me go ahead and get my screen share fired up. There we go. Here is my deck. I will also point out that I would like you to please email me for the presentation itself if you would like to go through it in detail later. On a lot of these pages, I am including some additional detail that I don't always go deep into during today's discussion, and that is intended to be read by you if you would like to after today's call. As always, we must pay attention to the fact that the information that we are about to provide to you is not intended to be used as specific investment advice per se. It is assumed to be highly accurate. We have researched all of the materials and are providing it to you in good faith, is what is happening here today. In case you haven't met me, here is a very abbreviated version of my biography, along with a picture with my trusty co-pilot here, Abigail. I have a couple people in the room here who've seen her, so I thought you would enjoy this picture from a few weeks ago. But I started this firm in 2022. But that was just my latest endeavor. I have been a certified financial planner for a decade, and that means I have done about 1,000 personal financial plans over the time. I'll put an asterisk next to that too. It's probably about 1,000 financial plans. But I have a bachelor's of science from the University of Iowa from way back in the old days. I have a certified financial planning degree, and I live in Lisbon, Portugal, and sometimes in San Francisco, and that is that. Ryan is here too. I talk fast, so I'll just take you through him really fast. Sorry, Ryan. Ryan is in Washington. The state of Washington is where another one of our offices is, and I am flying to see him tomorrow. I'm just going to make sure we're getting stuff done over there in the Washington office. Just kidding. But Ryan and I met over a decade ago too. Ryan holds designations from the American College in cryptocurrencies. That's right. He is our resident Bitcoin specialist, and he lives over in Seattle, Washington. And he's a bit more of an outdoorsman than me. So today's outline. First, we are going to walk through what is this omnibus bill that has just passed the House and Senate in brief. Then we're going to talk about how that affects all tax filers at the state and federal levels. We'll talk about some of the specific pieces of this legislation that I think are the most important, including the Social Security bonus exemption. The remittance tax is very important to us as expatriates. And we're going to talk about the SALT tax as well. Really, we have read the whole thing. And so my hope here is that we'll give you enough of an overview. If, like me sometimes, in subjects where I'm not interested, if you're not a super reader and you haven't read the bill or anyone else's review, that's what we're going to take you through today. And then I'm going to focus on some elements of it that I think are especially important to us if we live in Portugal. So, I know, talk about your jump scares, right? There we go. Right, Ryan? It's a little scary. Here it is. We're going to take you through the entire body of the bill. Just kidding. But no, this is the first page of the bill, the version that was passed by the Senate. As is typical, our current administration has a flair for the dramatic, so we signed it on July 4th, the second Liberation Day of this year. And it was a pretty big omnibus bill that was basically, like most bills that pass in the US, sort of a Frankenstein monster of about 8 different initiatives that were brought to the floor by different members. And you know how dysfunctional politics work in America today. They got all this stuff into the bill, and were able to get it across the line, where a lot of the individual components of it would likely never have stood a chance to pass on their own, including the onerous remittance tax that I know a lot of us want to know about. But I thought I would just kind of list out the 12 most important elements of this. Number one, of course, and this is really the biggest function of the bill, is that it's taking those TJIA, Taxes, Jobs, and Incentive Act tax cuts and making them permanent. So, you know, back in 2017, during the first Trump administration, there was this big tax cut bill. And so it was passed, but it was always intended to sunset. And a lot of the provisions in this bill are also set to sunset in 3 years, like the no taxes on tips, for example. A lot of the political promises that are being delivered upon in this bill, frankly, are going to be sunsetting in 3 years, with the hopes, of course, that we can play more political football at that point. Anyways, first element that it does is makes a lot of those tax cuts permanent. We have the foreign earned income exclusion still applying. They didn't change that, so that's nice. We have up to $126,000 in earned income excludable. No changes in your reporting requirements for the expats in the room. So we still have the FATCA, the FBAR to take care of each year. There was an increase to the child tax credit to $2,200 per child, and there's no phase outs for it this time around. And so that is more valuable for those of us that are carrying, shall we say, a larger household around with us. Super helpful for me. I get $6,600 in credits. You get the Trump accounts. So this is a wild one, and it really does only last for 3 years. You have up to $6,000 that you can put in sort of it's like an IRA account, but it's literally called the Trump account. Don't ask me, I don't make these things up. And so you can open them with a custodian and you can fund them. And then just like any other sort of tax deductible, tax deferred account, that can be used in the future like a Roth IRA. So when you take the money out later on, all of the investment that's been done inside of that account will then be tax free. Dividends and capital gains still taxed in the same way as they have been since time immemorial. There is no shift to a residence-based taxation regime. Now, there was actually a lot of talk about this. Essentially, the U.S. for a minute was considering responding to the Americans Abroad Tax League. There was a group of Americans that had been lobbying to receive similar treatment to what European entities, member states sort of recognize from one to the other, which is that they don't have citizenship-based taxation. So, you know, in the U.S., we're taxed as U.S. citizens wherever we go. And there was actually a movement to eliminate that and to join the rest of the world, but it didn't really go anywhere. Okay, so that was something that was talked about a lot, but we'll keep our eye on that. That might be coming to us at some point in the future. Clean energy cuts. You know, this is something that Ryan might bring up later on. This is an investment theme more. As we saw, after the bromance between Elon and Herr Trump went away, it felt like this was sort of a slap back to Elon. Like, you don't get any more of those tax cuts for buying electric cars. And so that might affect stocks that are associated with that sector. There wasn't any real estate tax reform, although that's not totally true. The exemption for estates has been now made permanent. Now it's going to be 15 million, and so that's effectively a $30 million exemption on the death tax for families, and because it was set to sunset was the thing. So if we hadn't made this sort of permanent adjustment to the estate exemption, it might have gone back down to 3 million, and that would have been, of course, very consequential for everyday millionaires. Foreign tax credits are still untouched. Um, I like to say, of course, Portuguese tax coordination is crucial. This is especially important when you consider the remittances and when you consider the Social Security phase outs. We'll be talking about that just a little bit in a second. And the debt ceiling was increased by $5 trillion. And so this is just something everybody hates, of course, this sort of like fake ceiling that we continually sort of bicker about. Nobody likes it in Congress. The president always gets a black eye over this. They basically gave themselves a couple of years of room so that we don't have to have this debt ceiling debate for a couple of years. We get to just keep running up the tab. Yeah, you can tell where I fall on that. I mean, instead of not spending more, because this bill effectively is designed in such a way that the CBOE, the budgetary office, has predicted this will add about $3 trillion to our already $30 trillion plus dollar debt load. Probably not a great thing, but the White House has assured us, no, don't worry, we'll grow our way out this time. Just another sort of variation on the old, this time it's different refrain. So the ABA 101 has been born into existence. And so the first thing that we have to recognize is that if this had expired, then the tax brackets would have gone higher. The tax rates under the Tax Cuts, Jobs and Incentive Act, they were brought down to 10%, 12, 22. You can see that, like, contrary to popular opinion out there, I will myth bust. The top rates did not receive the most generous benefit from this bill. So the bill actually does permanently set these rates down lower, but the best benefits are received here by the second, third, and fourth brackets. So going from 12 to 15% would have been really onerous for people that are making $15,000. That's about a 25% reduction in tax liability for people that are making less money. So it's not just the wealthy that we're getting a big handout here. We really saw the middle class here. Which bracket is that? That's the folks making a couple hundred grand a year, which is now middle class in America, staying at 24 versus a 28% tax rate. And so I know, it's popular to say that this was just a really big handout for the rich, and it's not a handout, but it's pretty broad base. And the hope here was that we would, that we would get growth from keeping tax cuts in place, which again is also a little bit of a funny way to look at this, because it's not really true that you're going to get growth from keeping tax rates low. You're just not going to get hammered by what would have been trillions of additional dollars in tax liability for ordinary Americans. So again, not to be technical, but this was helpful. As you can see, the TCJA and the OBBBA, how many B's? Yeah, they're the same. They're basically the same deal, and now we don't have to worry about that sunsetting. So again, this is a really busy slide. I intend for you to ask me for this later. I'm not going to go through all of every single slide, but what we see here is just the restatement of the fact that we made permanent all of these tax deductions that were made. We have the QBI deduction kept at 20%. And what this is the qualified business income is if you're running an LLC or an S corp, you basically have a 20% deduction on the first. Or no, you get a deduction on the 20% of your first 20% of your income. They kept it. They kept it in place. So that is stimulative. And we're going to go through this in a second. The mortgage interest and mortgage insurance premiums, those are now going to be They're going to continue to be deductible, and they raised the SALT tax limit as well. Here it is. So before I proceed, I just want to point out that the Q&A is open. Part of the reason that I don't invite Ryan to just talk, because he's so good at talking, and he's going to in a minute, but I like him to monitor the Q&A and respond to things and push questions forward to me if in fact you have them. But since I've just been in sort of like data distribution mode, I'm sure that there's not that many questions. So the SALT tax. So there was a lot of controversy around this back in, I think, 2017, or maybe it was sooner than that. Basically, what this was is there was a $10,000 limit to what you could deduct in terms of your mortgage interest expense, and they have increased that to 40K now. So essentially, if you have, $40,000 in interest expense on your primary home, you're now able to deduct all of that, which is a substantial amount of money if you think about it. An additional $30,000 in deductions can now be brought back into your tax returns. That is a big deal for individuals in high tax states. Think of California, for example. You have to be itemizing, of course. You can't take this if you do the standard deduction. And so you get middle income relief from this. And why only middle income? Well, because you have a phase out. Okay, so if you have $500,000 in AGI, then you are going to see that there's a phase out. So along the x-axis down here, I've just sort of carried the slide with because it kind of shows you how high the deduction is. So you get this $40,000 deduction under the new law, and it phases out to $10,000 if you're making over $500,000 as a household.
And just to check in as a definition, AGI would include capital gains. So
Mhm.
it's not just your income with your AGI. If we have a big year selling a lot of stock, selling a house, it might hurt your ability to write off mortgage interest paid.
Exactly. Thank you. And that's why we monitor AGI, right? And so I get a lot of questions in my day-to-day from folks that we are working with actively. We help you to plan your taxes, okay? And when we're helping you to plan your taxes, we can now take a look at this, okay? Whether you're in the United States or you're working with me in Portugal, we're going to be monitoring and effectively planning out your tax strategy. This is now going to be part of it. Is you want to make sure that you're not wasting this or maybe running up a high bill on your capital gains. No taxes on Social Security. Well, that's not exactly true, but it is mostly true. So 76% of people are going to receive the benefit of this. What does it mean? Well, we're not repealing Social Security taxes like the government had told us, but we are giving a bonus to individuals such that if you are under $75,000 in total income, you're going to get an extra $6,000 in deductible Social Security income. And that means, of course, you're going to get 12 grand if there's two of you in a married couple. It doesn't really change the taxation formula. And so I've done sort of a scenario example down here. Once you get above 180K AGI, then normally you would be taxed. But here you're going to get the extra deduction. And so you're basically going to see less taxes paid at that middle income level than you would have ordinarily seen. I point out on the next slide that not so fast if you're living in Portugal, because in Portugal doesn't recognize any kind of deductibility or the non-taxable nature of Social Security. Okay, and so if you don't have NHR, then this doesn't really help you. Okay, because you're going to be paying in Portugal on all of your income, even if it's pension income, which is what Social Security is considered as. So this doesn't really help you much. You're going to be paying more in Portugal anyways, so that US tax bonus, that bonus deduction, not really helpful to you. So that's just something to bear in mind and I should have probably said that at the beginning of this, is that a lot of these benefits go away when you consider the fact that if you're like a Portuguese tax resident, you're just subject to Portugal. So they don't care about any of this stuff that's bringing your taxes down in the U.S. And so you're paying the higher of both systems. So if you're paying more in Portugal, you're just paying more. So a lot of this sort of doesn't matter.
Before we move on, John, good question from the field from Rosita. Does Portugal give a deduction for home mortgage interest paid?
No,
A
no,
pretty
they,
easy
no,
answer.
no, sorry, they don't. And I mean, just to stay with that for one second, so many of us are very disappointed when we discover this, that, Portugal just doesn't care about any of our tax legislation at all. So any of these special rules that are executed sort of like, below the line when we're doing our tax filing, they're invisible to the Portuguese tax authorities. They're invisible. The only time where there are compatibilities, like I've talked a lot over the years about the Roth IRA benefit, they only work if you can compare what's mechanically happening in your accounts with things that are happening in Portugal, and they're close enough in character, and they're sort of approved via the tax treaty that you can make the case that they're the same in Portugal. So, like, with the Roth IRA conversion, you've already paid taxes on it, and they have plenty of these account types in Portugal that look and act and quack like a duck. They will say, yes, it's fine. You can go ahead and you can say it's already been taxed. You're not going to get taxed again. But a lot of these are special rules that come in at the level of the tax filing. And so they will not, in fact, be honored, or they'll just look at you funny when you ask whether they honor these different kinds of rules. So the remittance, this is a huge deal. The remittance tax. So the remittance tax, it was what it basically is it's a capital control. And it says that any remittances, any money that's being sent out of the United States abroad is going to be automatically subject to a tax. And so you send money out, you're going to get taxed a certain amount. So the original version that was written by the Congressional House, it was a 3.5% remittance tax. When it was approved in the House and sent to the Senate modified it to make it 1%. Um, but it was passed. They also they changed the exclusion rules to where the House version, it was really only going to be applied to Americans, and now it's applied to everybody who's receiving money from American accounts, and it's only applicable to like cash transfers, which weirdly does not actually cover a lot of the different kinds of transfers that you can do. And so it's money orders, cashier's checks, and cash that is being sent. We need to get a little bit more clarity on this. I'm still seeking some clarity from a partner that's going to tell me whether it applies to things like TransferWise, because we just did a webinar a few weeks ago on these nice multi-currency wallets, and I'm not really sure whether this is going to be effectively done with them. There's my phone. But yeah, it basically is going to hurt a lot of people that rely on cash transfers, basically kind of diaspora communities, low income recipients. Think about a lot of sort of uh, immigrants that are working on a more cash basis in their lives in America. It's going to hit them the most. And so the rest of us, if we are taxed on this, can seek relief. You can ask for a credit for a refund when you file your taxes every single year. What I'm more concerned about with this one is the long-term effects. Congress has a funny, the government has a funny habit of introducing a law in that's sort of like a toe in, and then during the next election cycle they can widen the use of this, or they can slightly change the way that they offer reimbursement. They can eliminate reimbursement, so they can make different qualifications necessary. And so that's kind of what worries me the most. In its current form, it's not that bad. And so I have written kind of a little guide here on how this would work mechanically. I'm a show me kind of guy, and whether it comes to tax planning or this, I always want to like see how this works. So I created kind of a flow chart for that. The estate tax limit has been permanently extended. I covered that already. So we're up to 15 million per individual now. So if you pass away in the United States or in Portugal and you have a less than $30 million estate, no faz mal, as they say, Don't worry about it. Although if you do die intestate in Portugal, your Portuguese assets will be liable to be taxed and probated in Portugal. So it's just a sort of, little addendum there.
And intestate would be without a will established. Is that right?
Uh, yeah, it does actually mean that. And so the reason that a will would be useful, thank you, Ryan, is that you would basically use the will. Actually, no, it's even with a will. So intestate or with a will. See, I was probably just looking for an excuse to use that fancy word. You're going to get taxed a stamp tax for your assets that you own in Portugal. But the reason that you would still want to do a will is just to avoid them probating any U.S. assets. It probably wouldn't happen, but they could make the argument that your global asset base is subject to being taxed if you don't write a will that says, do not tax my assets, don't probate my assets globally in Portugal. Don't do it. You must do that. Um, yeah, so consider gifting strategies. This doesn't happen very, very often for the usual reasons. If you don't have more than $30 million, you don't care. But there are some strategies that you can use if your estate is above the exemption levels to further sort of reduce your exposure to taxation. All right, last piece here is the Retaliatory International Tax provisos. And so this did not happen. I'll just let you know that Section 899 was something a lot of us were concerned about. What this would do would be basically this would allow the Treasury to assess a tax on taxes that another country is assessing that it considers to be retaliatory. And so what that means is like there's something called the digital services taxes. So you're being taxed for things like VAT, for example, on services that you're subscribing to in Portugal. Basically, the U.S. could sort of gross up their taxes to match taxes that you'd be assessed in the other country. And so the potential top rates, which are currently set to these U.S. rates that we know about, would have been increased up to these additional rates so that the US could capture taxes instead of that other country capturing taxes. Okay, and so you think about why would they do that? Well, they would do that so that they could collect extra taxes. Because if you've worked with me on tax planning, you know that the tax treaty ensures that you pay at the higher rate between the two countries. So if Portugal is assessing you a net 48% tax, and the US is assessing a net 25% tax, and a lot of that extra 48 is because you've been exposed to different kinds of other taxes. The US is going to be able to say, hold on, that's discriminatory. I don't really know why the word was chosen in that way, but it makes it sound like heinous. So that's discriminatory. So we're going to actually match that tax rate. So we're going to collect the taxes. Would have been interesting. And it would have been another sort of way to reach around and collect extra taxes. But after a lot of back and forth, it was decided that they didn't move forward with this. But what's interesting is that they didn't create Section 899 this time. They didn't bring it into law, but they could. This is what's interesting is it's sort of like the I don't know, it's not Schrodinger's cat, but there's a rule in movies where if you see the gun in Act One, you've got to watch out because it could come back to shoot somebody later in the movie. And so once this has been gotten into the lawmakers' minds, it's a bit like this 1% remittance tax. Once it's out there, then it can be brought to life later on. And so I would just keep my eye out for this one because this is scary. The thought that there could be additional really large tax assessments that could be brought into the picture later. And so that's my piece, and we'll go to Q&A after this. I want you to think of some good questions, guys, because there are presumably there's lots of you out here. You probably have some different situations that might be affected by this, but that's all I know for now.
And for my part here, I just wanted to say too, we had a great question and a request to go back to the remittance tax. So let me get through our market update and just kind of current events, and then let's jump back to that. So first off, there we go. Good question from Zev. So first off, here we are halfway through the year. Where do we stand? I know this chart is busy, but keeping in mind, and I always like to define this because I still remember it from 7th grade, when we identify a species of animal, kingdom, phylum, class, family, order, genus, species, right? So this is kind of all the different taxonomic definitions of investments that we might have. Gold and Bitcoin at the top, commodities, real estate, on and on and on. We have a 60-40 portfolio here. S&P 500, that's a big one to watch. EAFE, Europe, right? So year to date, EAFE, big winner, 20%, Bitcoin 18, S&P 500 finally into the green at 7. Now we had down 15 in the doldrums of April. So I just wanted to point out that is a pretty big swing, about a 21% swing from the bottom. And I think lending itself well to a more diversified portfolio, especially this year. Go ahead and go to the next one if you could, John. So piling on to that, specifically, gold year to date, 27%. So I've been getting a lot of questions about gold. I've got another chart in just a second. Europe, 19%. That, by the way, does not include the currency exchange rates. Add about 10% to that European return. When we are looking at Europe in the lens of the US dollar, we have to account for when our currencies fall versus the euro. We're at about an 85 to 1 exchange rate, 85 cents to 1 exchange rate right now. Finally then, emerging markets, Bitcoin value, and S&P 500. Go ahead and click one more time, John. Why am I not buying gold for everyone left and right like crazy? Yeah, it's not making me super confident right now. So we went on this really strong run, and then look at this, 1, 2, 3 times. We don't really seem to be breaking out past about a 30% run rate. That is not to say this isn't a decent diversifier. It is represented in many of my clients' portfolios today, but that looks to me like someone's trying to make money off of my clients, so I'm being careful. We are keeping our eye on things.
But we did put a lot of money on gold at the beginning of the year, right?
Yes,
So
we
just
did.
in case anybody that's with us or has joined us doesn't realize this, we invest for people that hire us to do this work. And I wanted to say this when we were on this slide. We actually made a strategic choice to pivot away from a sort of S&P 500 centric investment, right? Because usually the U.S. leads. But with
Right.
what we think of as sort of like the Trump risk premium, because the decision making is a little bit different right now, we have sort of limited our U.S. exposure this year.
Indeed. And on that note too, I mean, gold is a classic currency play. When you've got your kind of global currency as the United States dollar and it's falling relative to other currencies, gold tends to be a hedge, and that is why we made that move in February. So we did catch a fair bit of the run up, but there it is. Go ahead and go to the next if you could. Finally, into sectors. So in that organization, right, the stock market, the US stock market, these are the sectors of the US stock market that are doing well, industrials and financials. Here are the ones that are not doing as well. Consumer discretionary, think spending and luxury goods, Amazon. Healthcare, energy is somewhat anemic, but the BBB does include things like clean coal. Still don't know what the heck that is, but I think they're getting more money. Real estate and consumer staples kind of bringing in the middle. Tech, nice to see that with all the layoffs that have happened. Nice to see that starting to deliver some more returns.
But that's a comeback story, isn't it?
It is. It is indeed, especially with the early part of the year. It's been interesting, though. There's a lot of companies that are moving towards AI, and thus far I am testing, and everyone should know this, I don't trade test ideas with real dollars. We are testing some portfolio ideas about companies that are adopting AI, and the results are mixed. However, the companies that sell picks and shovels, like NVIDIA, are doing quite well, and that continues to be a theme that is, I think, been quite rewarding. Year to date, our AI strategy is beating the S&P 500.
Hey,
Big belligerent budget, I titled this slide. This is just a graphical representation of what gets added to the deficit. That would be in purple for just clear and obvious terms. Another thing that this shows us, and you can see the trend, it promises a big jump in the next 3 years, and then, not so much in subsequent years. Yeah, something tells me that those gaps will be filled. That is a saying in the traders world, all gaps must fill. So this is not really indicative of what I would call a balanced budget, or I think anyone would call a balanced budget. We're adding trillions to the debt, and now, right, we're at 98% GDP. This puts us up into the over 100%. That means we are borrowing more than what we make. You're making 100 grand a year, your debt costs 120 grand a year. That's insolvency. So I'm really hoping that we'll grow our way out of it as promised. This is, I think, interesting as we start to look at different perspectives. We're starting to look now at, okay, what the heck do we do with all this? So S&P 500 returns, first year presidential term versus other years. Green is this year, right? It is not uncommon for new presidents, especially in their second term, to come out with a bunch of stuff that causes volatility, right? Because they're not up for re-election, at least they're not supposed to be. All other years in purple there, this is a kind of an exaggeration. Not the only time that this has happened, but when we get presidents coming out saying, I'm going to change everything, big stuff, it can cause a lot of volatility, which it has. This one mostly being focused on the tariff policies. Go ahead and let's move forward. I find this interesting. Go back one, thank you. Again, this isn't enough to bet your whole retirement on by any means. However, when we have a big drawdown in the first half, we often have a great second half, usually, right? There are some caveats to that, but right now, that's what we're ripping for. S&P 500 is at a new all-time high. That green line could very well be our second half because we had a first half drawdown of right around 15%. So there are 65 instances where that has happened, and out of those 65 times, the average is that green line. I think that's pretty interesting. Go ahead, John. Here's the caveat. Here's the but, right? The S&P 500 is at a new all-time high. There is an indicator out here called the S&P 500 equal weight. And this has not yet confirmed. This is not in agreement. So this is a super top heavy rally. Trillion-dollar companies are the ones doing well. Those in the middle are not doing as well. Go ahead and hit the next. If that is not confirmed, purple line. If the equal weight confirms, green line. That is to say, jury's still out. I'm not super bullish right now, nor am I bearish. I am about as neutral as I can be. I'm feeling very, very swift.
Hey, wait a minute. How many slides did you put here? I didn't look before you put.
These are the last two. Go back one, please.
Oh no, you're going to talk about the SOFR line? Okay.
No. Interest rates, we expect them to come down. And the main one I wanted to point to is that we are estimating next year the federal interest rate to be at about 3.5. Now you go next. And then what are we watching? Construction payrolls, often a canary in the coal mine, not looking so hot right now, frequently a leading indicator about markets. And I'm done.
All right, Professor. I'm sorry. I'm always allergic to looking too much into these market-related items. Because we have some questions here, and you're right. The first question was the chiming in, not surprisingly, on an easy tax question we missed. Is a wire transfer subject to the 1% remittance tax? Nay. No, sir, it is not. It's really strange, actually, how restricted that they have made themselves. It's really just on like MoneyGram, like Western Union transfers, and what other kind of cash transfers can you think of?
I think something that you can use as a mental model to sort
Cashier's
of identify
checks.
it. Right. Imagine a cash transfer you can do without a social security number and a bank account, because that's kind of the group of people in America sort of under siege right now. They are sort of going after that. So if you have a bank account, social security number, you're doing wire transfers, that right now is not subject to the remittance tax.
Yeah, Charles Schwab, your standard banks, they are not going to be subject to this remittance. So it is not something that's really worrisome.
And at this time, it looks like that it also applies to our Wise and Revolut transfers, because those require you to have bank accounts, social security numbers.
So Anne asks, and who collects when the remittance tax is collected? It is going to be withdrawn from the transfer agent. So again, if you're Western Union, sending money and you send $100,000, they are required to collect the $1,000, and they are going to be the ones who are penalized if, in fact, they are not compliant. Someone asked us to make the type larger. It's hard to do, actually, Gary. I'm sorry. Okay. Somebody, you're anonymous. You asked whether Trump has shown a letter to Congress to fire Powell. I mean, okay, I didn't read that, but yeah, there has been and there will continue to be a lot of bluster around the firing of Jay Powell. If that were to occur, then I don't, as I like to joke, have a crystal ball, but it would be very traumatic for the Federal Reserve's credibility and our credibility as a nation. There is a rabbit hole that I don't have time, nor does anyone want to watch this go down. It'd be pretty disastrous, is the answer. Um, let's see, how would funds in an account like Wise or Revolut be taxed? We did answer that. They are not currently being taxed, and an FBAR is not, to my knowledge, required for that account type. The multi-currency wallets are not considered a banking entity, but I could be wrong on that. I haven't looked that up, and so let's just put an asterisk next to
I
that one.
need to point out one, Christine Witkowski. I, for one, appreciate Ryan's professional slides. Thank you, Christine.
Sorry, Ryan.
Sorry. No worries, guys.
Okay.
I enjoy what I do
Uh,
too much
yeah.
sometimes. Do you foresee social? I just want to say that one. Do you foresee Social Security being funded after 8 years? I see how it was running out. Guys, for Social Security, always seems to be on the chopping block. It's the huge pile of money that is owned
It's
by the
not
U.S. worker, but it
It's
gets
not the
yes,
it's not the chopping block though. What it is the
yes.
Office of Old Age Insurance shows us each year that the budget is running thin, and so in 7 years, the Social Security Fund is expected to be out of money. It will be insolvent. But here is the funny thing about that is that number one, it will continue to pay Social Security, is what it has stated. The government tells us they will pay out of current taxes. And so while I don't find it very comforting that we will be essentially living hand to mouth on our Social Security system, that is what it is. And number two, the bonuses that were just offered in this bill will actually cut like another half a year, I think is what has been calculated off of our current Social Security's available funds. So it's going to run out faster. And so the first time I
Okay.
heard somebody saying, we're not going to be taxing Social Security either, I said, that's great on a system which is already so beleaguered that it's expected to run out. Let's not collect tax revenues to fund it. That sounds like a fantastic idea. So that's just what we're
And just to
faced with
check in
here.
from Millennial Land, when I look at my Social Security estimate statement, it currently says for every $1,000 estimated on this statement, expect 900, right? So that's kind of how it's already being accounted for. It's not necessarily it's going to disappear, but maybe younger people are going to get reduced benefits.
Someone's asked us to please review the Social Security effect on $180,000 of income. And so, like anybody who's been challenged to perform a Magic Act live, I will do that. And so if we had $180,000 of Social Security income, that would, interestingly, be a very low tax rate under current guidance. And so with the bonus, I don't think you're going to be taxed on that, but we'll have to take that one off. Carol, go ahead and please email me after the call. What I really do hate to say is, though, in Portugal, you are in fact going to be subject to lots of taxes. That's right, about $90,000 in U.S. taxes. That's the problem with moving abroad and having pensions without the umbrage of NHR. So there we go. As a U.S. citizen living abroad, is one required to pay both U.S. taxes and the taxes of the new country? Asks Shiva. Shiva, no. That is the function of the double tax treaty, which exists between the two countries. And so for most highly civilized countries, that is what you will see is that there is a treaty in place, which prevents us from having to pay both countries. Um, would you please provide a link to your webinar recording regarding multi-currency wallets is what someone asks. Well, as it so happens, anonymous attendee, we forgot to hit record on that one. Our bad.
Redoing
So
it next Thursday.
yeah, so we're going to bring Jess back. We're going to redo that, and we will record it, and we will, in fact, send the recording to everybody that attended that the first time as well. Can we talk about the Trump accounts and why were they established? Asks Anne. Well, Anne, the truth is I don't know exactly what the purpose was there, so I will have to do a little bit more digging for you on that. Um, Yeah, I can't account for that one. That one jumped into my field of view at the last minute. I can only assume that it was another branding effort from the wonderful folks behind Trump Steaks and Trump Online Academy and the failed effort to revive.
Oh, the phones. Yep.
Yeah, it's just one of those
But it is
things, you know.
interesting if it does the tax-free benefit, it could be interesting. Right now, we only have UTMAs and 529s really for underage children. So, it could be interesting. More to come, right? This just got passed. We're trying to be sort of breaking stories here.
Yeah, I mean tax deferred accounts. I mean, if you think about the way that tax policy functions at the level of the civic discourse, it's really all intended to sort of encourage behaviors. And so, as a tool for that, I mean, any way that they can incentivize people to save is likely to be to the ultimate good. That's probably what they would say. Um, as a U.S. citizen living abroad, it's one. Oh, we already answered that question. So, all right. I think we are just about out of questions here.
I'm sorry, Carol. When you typed your first question, I just got one word from that. I did not see your first one regarding the mortgage interest discussion. So a deduction. If you wanted to throw that back in the chat, we'd be happy to try and field it for you. Anonymous attendee asks, I have heard there is a new proposal in Portugal for a flat 20% tax for golden visa holders, effectively creating a golden visa related pseudo NHR.
True. That's a true story. Yeah, that's a Portugal only issue, but yeah, that is certainly being considered at the moment, but nothing has been made obviously permanent. So if you put $6,000 in 4T accounts, do you not pay taxes on the 24,000? Well, so just to take this a little bit further, Anne, and then I think for now we'll put this to bed. So usually, if you have a tax deductible and tax deferred account, they are tied to the Social Security of a single owner. And so, like 529 accounts or also college savings accounts for children, um, you're basically you're going to be able to set one up for each of your children. And so the Trump accounts, I have no doubts, although I haven't looked into it, are going to be the same. Otherwise, they would be gamified all the way out. Because yes, of course, people would open as many $6,000 accounts as they would like. So yeah, so those are probably going to be tied to a single individual's social security number. And Carol asks, is Mort int dead only on primary? Oh, is mortgage interest deductible? Guys, I don't love acronyms or maybe you're texting on a phone. Is mortgage interest deductible only on your primary residence? Yes, but mortgage interest is actually deductible against the income that you receive from rental properties under any circumstances anyways. So it is deductible on, so the answer is no. Like you can deduct your mortgage interest on your primary and your secondary home in the United States tax return that you file. Jennifer asks, she just sold her home in California. Congrats. I did that a few years ago too. She plans on moving to Portugal. When she does her US taxes, will she have to pay taxes on capital gains in Portugal? Not if you are not yet a tax resident here, which it sounds like you just sold your home. So even if you sold in the same year that you moved to Portugal and then you somehow became a tax resident at the last minute in that year, no, it doesn't follow a tax calendar. Just because I sold my house in January of 2025 and then I moved and became a tax resident now in Portugal, it's your tax residency begins the date that you go live as a Portuguese tax resident.
And a good opportunity just to call out a great question and why financial planning is really important for these kinds of moves. That could be the difference of quite a bit of money if timed in a different way.
Yes, David. Someone asked, with NHR, you don't owe capital gains on your home. Correct, sir. So definitely look us up for a one-on-one discussion regarding NHR, or go and find the details concerning NHR on your own. It is amazing. It does exempt you from paying income tax assessed on any income received outside of the country in general. So I think we're good. I'm gonna call it a wrap. You guys have been very patient, and again. I will offer all of the deck here to anyone that would like them. Just send us an email or go to our website here.
And
Am I
if you
seeing my
weren't,
screen
yeah,
share?
this was a question that I did type an answer to. If you weren't signed up for the currency webinar, but you would like to get a copy of it. Yep, you can use our form or email us at info@greenoceanglobal.net for any of this stuff. That's how you get in touch with us. We'd love to supply you with the info you want.
Exactamente. And the last one here just got me right in my heart. Okay, thank you, Anonymous, but true. You guys are awesome and good looking too. I'll take it. You know, I've had a rough week, so any port in a storm, guys. I'm going to be traveling to the United States tomorrow, so just pray for me, okay? All right, guys, it has been wonderful. It's a pleasure as always. Please be well. I'll talk to you again.
Thank you.
All right,
Have a great
see you,
week.
Ryan. Bye.
Bye.